What's up everybody, it's Izzy, and in this video I want to follow up on a recent video that I did talking about how to find powerlifting meets. The follow-up in this video is simply going to be how to pick the right federation, the right powerlifting federation for you. I'm going to be going over a lot of my old material and updating it with the current landscape in 2016 as it stands with things like picking the best powerlifting gear, finding the right powerlifting federation for you, all that stuff, and eventually programming and nutrition as well. But we're going to start right here with how to pick your powerlifting federation. Powerlifting, like most individual sports, has really two main prestigious accomplishments, and that is you either win the world championships or you can set a world record. Now, usually the thing is in a sport, like if you set the 100-meter dash record, that means that you're the fastest person to ever run the 100-meter dash if you set the all-time world record. Now, in powerlifting, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing when someone says that they've set a world record, because you have to understand the conditions under which these records were set. Even the all-time world records have been set under vastly different conditions over the decades. So, for those of you who are unaware of all of this, to explain it, we've got to start with the history of powerlifting, a brief overview, if you will. Powerlifting was originally a collection of odd lifts. In some places, it was, this squat, bench, and deadlift, but that didn't come until later, and it wasn't always even in that order. The modern version of powerlifting evolved in the late 60s to early 70s. Basically what had happened is that bodybuilding took off in popularity, in large part due to the success of Joe Weider and all of his publications. So Bob Hoffman, the owner of York Barbell, which had previously dominated, the health and fitness culture, that landscape, with through weightlifting and other means, decided to start endorsing powerlifting as an attempt to get some of the market share back from bodybuilding. So in 1971, York Barbell sponsored the first World Championships of Powerlifting. And after 2 years of this, where there was just some crazy things happening, like competitors using 20-meter long knee wraps and just crazy stuff like that, people got frustrated and they wanted a uniform standard rule set. And in 1972, the IPF, or the International Powerlifting Federation, was founded. So, for those of you who are following along here, the IPF is basically the original powerlifting federation. It's the OG federation that came before all the other ones. As most of you are probably aware, the IPF and its national affiliate organizations, such as the USAPL in the United States and other ones for other various countries, still exists. It's still there, and in fact, it is the largest powerlifting federation in existence with the most members. And realistically, it is the only powerlifting federation which offers a legitimate world championship every single year, where there's representatives, from 10 to 12 countries that were all putting up really competitive numbers. Now, there's a bunch of other organizations that claim to put on world championships, but when 60 to 70% of your lifters are all from the United States, that doesn't really speak to a true world championship, which is exactly what actually happens in the IPF. So this really raises the question for some people of, well, if the IPF is the original powerlifting federation, the OG federation of powerlifting, and it's the only one with a legitimate world championship, why do other federations even exist? And for those of you who are unaware, in many places, especially in the United States, there can be as many as dozens of choices for federations that you can compete in. Now, the genesis of this has to do with drug testing and politics, and it's hard to say which one mattered more, but they go hand in hand. In 1982, the IPF instituted mandatory drug testing, and along with most of their rules, this was in an attempt to help legitimize the sport and get it into the Olympics. So the problem with this is that in strength culture, strength sports, steroids have almost always been there. Almost since the inception of strength sports, steroids had been used, and the thing is that nobody really saw this as wrong. So what you got in 1982 was a bunch of lifters who had already been using for years, basically, you know, a large part of their whole lifting career, if not their whole lifting career. And they didn't see anything wrong with it, and they weren't willing or didn't want to get off of those drugs. In combination with other political issues, such as the IPF threatening to ban lifters for competing in other organizations or competing in, you know, military competitions, fireman competitions, things like that, people just decided, screw the IPF, we're going to do our own thing. And Ernie France and Larry Pacifico created the APF, the American Powerlifting Federation. And unfortunately, that set off a trend where basically what happened was that every time a big name powerlifter or a big group of powerlifters didn't like the rules of their current federation, they just went and made their own, the same way that France and Pacifico did. And so we got to this position where there is just dozens of options of federations instead of just the IPF. But again, the genesis of that, the beginning of it really was drug testing and the political pressure that the IPF was putting on lifters to only compete in their organization if they wanted to be a member of that organization and compete in its biggest meets. When we're talking about picking a federation, I think there's largely three categories of people that you need to consider. The first is recreational lifters, people who are just doing this for their own PRs, to have fun, just to enjoy themselves, just want to try it out one time, or whatever. You know, that a large umbrella of they're doing it for recreation. The second would be competitive drug-free lifters, and the third would be competitive untested powerlifters. And really, the considerations for all three of these groups are fairly different. So I'm only going to address one group at a time as far as what my recommendations are for picking a federation, depending on which group that you do fall under. The first group I want to talk about is recreational lifters. And recreational lifters can be anything from just beginners to people doing their first meet, or just someone who's just not really all that serious about the competitive process. They just want to see what it's all about. And if that's you, my recommendation would simply be you really only have two considerations. One is the location of the nearest meet, and I would strongly recommend that you compete in the closest meet that you can so that you avoid travel expenses and just the stress of going somewhere really far away just to have your squat, bench, and deadlift judged for something that you may or may not be super serious about in the future. The second consideration is which rules do you like? Certain federations have very different rules than others. So for example, the IPF has a 2-hour weigh-in. Many other federations allow 24-hour weigh-ins, meaning that you weigh in 24 hours before you compete, which allows for a lot more drastic weight cuts. Some people like to use deadlift bars, which are thinner bars that flex more than a stiffer bar before the plates leave the ground. This can allow you to pull more weight. Some people like that. Some people like to use knee wraps in a belt. Some people want to use suits knee wraps in a belt. There's a variety of different categories and styles of lifting, and you need to figure out what is your favorite style of lifting as a recreational lifter, and then try to find a federation that already uses or promotes the same set of rules that you use in your own personal training. And all of this is really just to say that if you're a recreational lifter, your focus should be on having a good experience. Go to a meet where you don't have to completely change your technique or add a new piece of equipment that you've never used before. And just focus on setting PRs, enjoying the experience, meeting other lifters, and just generally soaking it all in to see if it's something that you'd like to go further into in the future. So avoid the long travel expenses and avoid competing somewhere that has rules that you don't like. There's just no point in doing that if you're a recreational lifter. The second group that I want to address is those lifters who are using drugs or simply want to be untested for whatever reason. Now, here's the thing. With this group of people, the considerations are fairly different depending on what they want out of the whole experience. So, for example, in my opinion, the highest achievement that can be attained by a untested lifter is to set an all-time world record for powerlifting in one of the weight classes in one of the 3 disciplines, or of course the total being the highest achievement, setting an all-time world record total in any of the weight classes. Now, in order to best do that, you obviously want a federation that has the most lenient set of rules, or at least the rules most conducive to your success in that area. So you definitely want something with at least a 24-hour weigh-in. You want a federation that allows the most heavy duty of equipment, so thick belts, 3-meter knee wraps, a monolift so you don't have to walk it out. You want a federation that maybe even uses those wider benches. You don't want any restrictions on lifting your head off the bench when you bench, or having to have your feet flat. And you definitely want something that uses a deadlift bar. And most likely you'll probably want a federation that doesn't use the thinner kilo plates. So if you're looking for a federation that really combines all of those aspects to just produce the highest absolute numbers that you can, it's still to this day the Southern Powerlifting Federation, or the SPF. Now, a lot of people get pissy when they hear that, but it still tends to be true. People don't like the SPF because in many instances it has seemed like they have passed outright high squats as part of world record squats and world record totals. Now, from an ethical perspective, of course, you don't want to compete somewhere where they're not truly following the rules. However, from the perspective of somebody who's already doing everything that it takes, including using, in many cases, illegal supplements to achieve the results that they're getting, it makes a lot of sense to simply compete in the place that has the best set of circumstances that are conducive to that goal of getting the highest number possible. Now, of course, there's a lot of other reasons to compete if you're a highly competitive, untested lifter, and one of those might just be competition. And if you're interested in competition and strict judging and knowing that your lifts are clean and legit, I would say that the best federation out there today is the IPL, or the International Powerlifting Federation. And in the States, its national affiliate is the USPA. A lot of the best untested lifters are now competing in the USPA, so just getting a chance to compete against those types of lifters at regional and national level meets is an incentive all in itself, because you can really determine, who is the best lifter. Now, the last consideration, in my opinion, for the untested lifter is monetary. Where can you go to earn the most money? And the thing about that is that in today's landscape, you really need to be invited to most of the big money meets. You can't just go without having, a total that's in the realm of, top 10 in your weight class in the country that year. So in order to make those happen, and really in order to make the most money, you already have to be somewhat successful. And then that'll open doors for you to get invitations to some of the bigger meets, the pro-ams and all of that sorts of stuff. And that's what it takes in that regard. So if you're looking for that, realistically, you need to compete in the organizations that are having contests with money prizes that you're interested in. Again, the USPA or the IPL is a great choice for that. They've got several events where you can earn cash. But in any case, most of those are still going to be invitational, so you got to work your way up the chain and post respectable totals before you can even think about the monetary reward, because you're just not going to get the invites unless you're already a top flight lifter. The last group of lifters that we're going to talk about is the drug-free lifters, or the drug-tested lifters, as some people like to make that distinction, because to them it's very important that we all remember that some people do cheat. Now, in my opinion, the only real choice for a drug-free lifter is the IPF. Now, the only exception to that, I would say, is that if you just don't really care about having the best level of competition, if you don't really care about having the opportunity to win meaningful national and international championships, world championships, then yeah, you can just compete somewhere where you like the rules. Because there are federations such as the USPA that allow you to sign up for drug testing. So basically you can compete under whatever rules that you like, and then be drug tested after the meet so that you can prove that you're drug free. Now, if you are the kind of person who likes deadlift bars, who likes squatting raw with knee wraps, or using a monolift, then maybe that's the option for you. But in my opinion, if you want the best experience, you should compete in the IPF because it is the largest organization out there. It is the most competitive organization out there, regardless of drug testing. And I think that you'll simply have a better experience. It is, in my opinion, the highest quality and most professional federation as well. It has just the most money in it. Even the cash rewards at things like the Arnold this year were pretty much higher than almost any other powerlifting contest out there. So as a raw, drug-free lifter, if you want to gain, any sort of notoriety or make money off of the sport, or even just compete against the best of the best drug-free lifters, then you have to compete in the IPF because you're not going to get that in any other federation as a drug-free lifter. So my recommendation, my staunch recommendation, is that if you're drug-free, go with the IPF. So to kind of wrap up here and summarize my thoughts on powerlifting federations, I would say that if you're a drug-free lifter, the IPF is the way to go. Even though they have a 2-hour weigh-in, they make you use a 29mm stiff bar, and in general, they have the strictest rule set and the strictest enforcement of the rule set at actual meets. And even though that's going to cost you pounds off of your total compared to if you competed in a different federation, you're still going to get the highest level of competition in the IPF. You're still going to have the best opportunity to get attention for your accomplishments. People will notice what you're doing if you're an IPF champion. And to me, it's just simply the only really good choice out there for depth of competition, potential prize money, notoriety, legitimate records, all of the above. It's just the best choice for drug-free lifters. Now, if you're more interested just in putting up as biggest numbers as possible, find a different federation. Again, for recreational lifters, none of this matters as much. You should find something that's close to you and, if possible, has rules that you like. So rules, and beyond rules that you like, rules that are just similar to what you already do when you're training, so that you're not having to change too much for a new experience that you may not even want to do again in the future. So pick something that already has the rules you like and that is close. And I would say being close is even more important than the rules, because there's not that much difference between deadlifting with a stiff bar and a deadlift bar for a recreational lifter. That's not really a hugely important distinction. Now, for untested lifters, again, it really runs the gamut, just depending on what you want. If you're looking to make money, well, there's no shortcut in that regard, because you simply have to be one of the better lifters in your weight class to get the invitation to go to the big money meets in the first place. Without a good Wilks score, that's not going to happen. So you have to just get strong and really compete anywhere and put up big numbers so that you can start to get those invites. Now, if you're looking for the highest level of competition, you've got things like the IPL or the USPA, which in my opinion is probably the best out there as far as the federation at the regional and national level for competitive untested lifters. Now, if you're just going for the biggest number possible, you're definitely going to want to find something like the APA or the SPF that allows 3-meter knee wraps, a monolift, a deadlift bar, and all the trimmings as far as the most advantageous rule set goes. And in my opinion, that really covers it. So one more time, for drug-free lifters, I'd highly recommend the IPF. For untested lifters, I would say that the USPA or the IPL is your best choice in most cases. Unless you're just going for the biggest numbers possible, then go ahead and check out the SPF or the APA. And for recreational lifters, don't bother with any of it. Just go to the closest meet that you can find. And if you've got options, because there's a lot of close meets, then pick a federation which seems to have rules that you like. All in all, that's all I got to say about powerlifting federations. I hope you guys found the video informative or at least entertaining. If you liked it, you know what to do. Like the video, comment, share, all that good stuff. And keep killing it in training. Have a nice day. Peace.